Since a recent court ruling overturning much of Kentucky's marriage law, it is absolutely critical that every church review its constitution and bylaws. If this hasn't been done recently, it's safe to say it's time to update them now. Here are a few questions that underscore the importance of updating governing church documents. What if a homosexual couple asked to use your church facility for a marriage ceremony? What if they insist on using your facility since you allow non-members to use it for weddings? Let's say you reached a young boy through Vacation Bible School and he brings both of his dads to Parents' Night. How will you lead the church to respond? What if you have a new Christian who is in a homosexual marriage and wants out? Do you recommend divorce? What if one of your staff workers comes out of the closet? Do you have a discipline policy in place? Is your policy targeted solely towards homosexual behavior, or do you equally apply it to other sexual sins? Tough questions, but in our fast-changing and morally relativistic culture, the church cannot afford to be caught off guard. First, let's be clear about the motivation. Updating governing documents in the church should not be done out of fear or hatred, but from a deep desire to maintain the integrity of the church. You must have clarity in your church documents about what you believe. This is for the benefit of the staff, church members, and the community. This maintains your biblical witness to the community. And these changes must be motivated by love. So let's review a few key documents. Facility use policy. Churches that allow non-members to use their facilities, perhaps for a wedding or as a meeting place for a civic group, can be considered public accommodations and are potentially vulnerable to changing laws. Churches do not have to close their doors to outside groups. In fact, this would be uncharitable, but a good written policy will head off any potential problems. Here are a few key components of the policy. Only allow activities that are consistent with Scripture. Facility users must affirm that their beliefs, practices, and planned uses are in harmony with the church's faith and practice. Have a printed copy of facility use guidelines and provide to church members and to users. There must be insurance for all non-church sponsored events, a reservation request form and agreement form as well, and the agreement should be signed. How about your formal membership policy? It's great when new members join the church, but if your membership policy is not up to date, then you could be setting yourself up for trouble. Members should understand that joining a church comes with responsibilities and expectations and should not be taken lightly. Members should have read and agreed to the statement of faith. They should also have read the statement of church teachings on human sexuality, marriage, divorce, and life. And they should have reviewed the church's discipline policy. Candidates for membership should also sign each document so it's clear that they have read and understood the church's expectations. Let me underscore why this is so important. Last year, a large church in Western Kentucky had a new member join, affirmed some basic beliefs of the Christian faith, and soon after volunteered to teach Vacation Bible School just days before VBS began. It was discovered that this woman was a lesbian who was legally married to another woman. This happened in a conservative Southern Baptist church. The church could have found itself in a legal mess, but they graciously dealt with her and asked her not to teach VBS and to remove her membership. There was a good ending to that story, but it might not be that way for the next church. A common question I'm asked is whether existing members should read and sign updated church governing documents. It might seem odd for longtime church members to have to sign the detailed membership policy, but it is a small inconvenience in light of a big threat facing the church today. In the end, the integrity of the church is protected when there is consistent application of the new changes. Church discipline. What happens when a member breaks the rules? Let's say you have a church employee whom you discover is living in an openly immoral lifestyle, or you find a church member is living in open sin. What do? Failure to act in accordance with principles found in Matthew 18 dishonors the name of Christ and discredits the church. Unaddressed sin and unfair application of discipline procedures could make the church vulnerable to legal challenges at worst and charges of being inconsistent at best. For example, if a person in open sin remains a member and is undisciplined, and another member involved in another kind of sin, say homosexuality for example, the church fails to be consistent. Certain sins should not be singled out, and others should not be given a free pass. Consider a few passages in Scripture that speak of discipline. Proverbs 3:12 says, "For the Lord reproves him whom he loves, as a father the son whom he delights." Hebrews 12:6, "For the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and chastises every son whom he receives." Matthew 18:15 through 7, "If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault, between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not listen, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector." It is critical to note that church discipline is not a witch hunt, nor is it a time to ridicule, embarrass, or be used to settle a score. Discipline is to be motivated by love to restore an individual into fellowship with the body of believers. Consistency is the key to church discipline, and fair application of the rules and expectations are bulwarks against lawsuits. Too many churches have lapsed in their duty to practice church discipline, but in this day, practicing church discipline is not an option, but an imperative. It benefits the individual by seeking to restore them to fellowship. It protects the church's witness, and it further insulates the church from a potential lawsuit. Here are a few other issues that should be addressed in the bylaws. Do you have a procedure where members can rescind or remove their membership? Do you have many non-active members on the church rolls? If so, this can be very problematic, especially as a growing number of self-identified evangelicals do not have a biblical worldview. Could you imagine dealing with a very controversial issue and having word get out that a meeting will take place to address it? Whether the issue be same-sex marriage or church discipline, imagine non-active members voting. Do you really want people who may not have been active in the church for years voting on issues that will shape the life and future of the church? Do you have a biblical basis for limiting employment opportunities? If you only allow men to serve in certain positions, for example, pastor, elder, or deacon, then the policy should be spelled out in the church bylaws, and it should be supported with biblical references. Failure to do so leaves the church open to a potential lawsuit. It also is critical for churches to have a statement on religious beliefs regarding marriage, and it should be supported by Scripture. Church bylaws should also include statements on other important issues, including biblical sexual ethics, the sanctity of life, and divorce. Statement of beliefs must include biblical references. Identify the governing body that is the sole authoritative interpreter of Scripture. Is it the deacons, church trustees, whatever it might be, spell it out. Bylaws should also include a policy for adults who work with children. Background checks should be conducted on child care workers, and there should be more than one adult working with small children. This is to protect children, their families, and the church. So after updating your governing documents, what should you do? It's not time to put your head in the sand, nor is it time for trench warfare in order to attack the opposition. But updating the church's governing documents help to maintain its religious freedom so it can freely engage the culture, disciple the nation, and to be a blessing to others.